Well, I was looking back at 12-year-old Little Sergeant America and happened to come across a really great deal on these comics I was looking for. It's weird. I was just kind of talking with my shop worker and mentioned, you remember that continuity comics way back in the late 80s and 90s, and did do you have any of those? And he pointed me to a box. I dug in, and there was actually quite a bit there, and they gave me a great price, and I was able to um, see once again what 12-year-old me thought on comic books, and I don't know, a little happy, a little sad. What I'm going to talk about today is Armor Comics, Armor and the Silver Streak from Continuity Comics. It was a, I believe, fairly short-lived series. It was back in 1985. Um, Neil Adams, I think, was struck out on his own to see what he could do, get away from the big two, make some magic. Neil Adams did great things like Batman and touched his fingers into, I believe, a little bit of Captain America in that. I think he's a great guy. I think he does a lot for the industry. I think sometimes he bites off more than he can chew. And getting back into it, I was rereading Armor, and I enjoyed the uh, Armor and Silver Streak are two young Canadian teens who an alien fleet comes into America, or the world, goes through the United States, gets to Canada, um, and starts just decimating the area that they live. They are worried about some, I believe, intergalactic force. They didn't really get too much into that. They pick up these two young boys and shuttle them off into space, give them uh, superpowers. Silver Streak is given speed. He can shoot energy beams out of his hands, a la Havoc. Armor was a young guy who they gave his brain a boost and made him a fighter 10 level out of 10. So he's a super fighter. His armor depletes itself, as you can see. It's all these blades and whatnot. The more weapons he uses, the less armor he has. Uh, it was interesting to dig back into this series. Um, and that's issue number one. And I really enjoyed it. I got about 12 issues. I think I was missing about maybe one in the middle. The thing is we complain about crossovers and changes and whatnot in our series. I think I'm reading number 7, and then I go to 8, and they're suddenly on Earth with no explanation. They also have an additional guy, Megalith, who joins their group. So evidently, there was a Megalith comic book. All of the story was told in that, coming back to Earth. So ended up missing out on that totally. And then they, like in number 10 or 11, they go back into space. Like none of that ever happened. Um, it is tough. It's kind of interesting to see how this ran the full gambit on different ideas. One of the things that Neil Adams did was fight the Comic Book Authority, and as you could see in issue number 1, he did what he wants, said what he want, didn't have to have their approval. And as I looked through them all, I noticed in number 7, boom. Here is the seal from the Comic Book Authority. Yeah, I'll try and get that up there a little more. And they were the ones that told you you can't do that. You can't have them, use drugs or spit or use foul language. So it's interesting. It's number 7 out of all of them. I don't know if that's where he stepped away and somebody got worried. All the ones after that don't have the stamp on them, so not quite sure why they went through all that kind of stuff. I showed you a couple of those covers, the Neil Adams style of movement and a little bit of storytelling. Things I'd forgotten about is you end up with a cover like this that has like all this dialogue. I'm not used to that on the comic book because they want you just to have art and put it up on the wall and then sell covers and all that. So it was interesting that number 5, and there was a couple of them that was a whole thing of dialogue down the side. So um, those also fed into, of course, as it got towards the 90s. There's a little bit of glare, but yes, the rest of it is, as you can see, shiny. There's nothing quite as nice as that shiny. It's not quite the full aluminum cover that some of them were, but there was quite a bit added to it. Um, this was a horrible storyline. That it's death match, so you think it's going to be some big fighting thing, and it's not. It feeds into this whole terrorism storyline, and there's a guy called they call him the Warlock, and the Warlock gets his powers by nuclear energy. He just bombards his body and becomes this almost gargoyle-like creature, but he says it's magic, and he says that he has all these he does spells and stuff like that, but it's all fueled by nuclear energy. So there was just weird ideas at this point. So that was number 1 of the Deathmatch series. I didn't get 2, but by number 3, you can see it's not a shiny cover. In fact, it is actually almost like newspaper material. So you can't quite see through it, but from my standpoint, it is a really weak material. There's a little bit of bleeding in the pages and stuff like that. Otherwise, the whites are fairly nice and white, but it was interesting to watch these 2 young, powerful Canadian daredevils get their powers, go from slaves to fighters to liberators. That part I enjoyed. The part when they come back into the world and they're trying to reintegrate themselves, they try and go back to high school. It just didn't work. The fact that a huge chunk of story was evidently told in Megalith, and I have not collected those yet, so there's just a chunk of story I don't have. Let's talk about crossovers. The death match not even being a death match, ranging from high cardboard glossy metallic covers to near newspaper. I can see why Continuity Comics went out of business. In the death matches, there were also some cards. They were double sealed in polythene bags. None of these characters I also didn't see in any of the comics either. So I think they were trying to get people fueled up for other ones that came from Continuity Comics. Almost all the advertisement in the comics were for other Continuity Comics. Crazy Man, Toy Boy. There was just, Samurai, the female samurai. I'm sure that they were taking some chances. It was the early 90s, well, late 80s, early 90s, where they threw everything at the wall to see what would stick. It was interesting. Going back, I definitely enjoyed some things. Some things I evidently had glossed over. And as I became an adult now, I appreciate less. So I'm thankful for my store for selling them to me, having them, selling them again at a great price. It just made for a weird trip. So there I go, late to my next party. So thank you very much for checking this out. Maybe you like Continuity Comics. If you have any of the old continuities, let me know. Let me know what you read. Let me know what series that you got into in your youth that just disappeared. Publishers that were big in the 90s that suddenly just poof were gone. So let's see what's out there.